Hey everyone, this is Deborah Anderson, the BlkWmnAnimator, coming back to you with another video. In this video, I'm going to talk about my experience with Sculpt January 2019. Sculpt January is a daily challenge where you try to do a different digital sculpt. So if you think of 3D modeling, 3D, creating the characters, creating anything, you can use certain programs to sculpt like you do in real life, but you're doing it on a computer. And so that's a skill set I'm trying to learn. So I decided to take on this challenge to get some more practice and challenge myself to create something every day. So I don't know if there's a company that runs it, but they pretty much create a topic for each day. So they had a lot of categories like mood, body, expression, all that type of stuff, and then they would have subcategories like tiny, what else, beard, jungle, and all that type of stuff. So you get an array of things that you can sculpt. And so let's get started on my experience. So first things first, let's start off with the research I did. They released the topics about 3 days early. So in December 27th or 28th, they released the topics. So I was able to do research on what I wanted to do for each topic. And the number one thing that is my downfall is that I'm constantly an overachiever. And so some of the things that I researched and decided will be my sculpt for the day was too lofty for my skill set, especially when it involved creating like faces or people. And that has always been a problem. You know, when my stepmom had I was 9 years old and she gave me some crochet books. And so I taught myself how to crochet. And the first things I started to crochet were house shoes, like slippers. And I didn't crochet a scarf till college. So mind you, I started crocheting at 9 years old. And scarf is usually the first thing you do. And I didn't crochet a scarf till college. I was making purses and house shoes and hats and all type of stuff. So that's kind of the same thing I did with this, where I'm just like, oh yeah, for the day one, I think it was like a beast. And I was like, oh, I'm going to do Ursula from Little Mermaid, which from my experience doing it, it would have turned out nice if I had more time. The arms turned out really nice, but then after a few hours, I just had to kind of quit and make something so I could go to sleep. And so I reused the tentacles that I made for Ursula and made like a little octopus. So that was my first misstep, just being an overachiever. So if I had researched simpler projects, it would have been better. Some more stuff from my experience is that I definitely need to practice more. I mean, with it being a new skill, that's a given. So it was interesting just to be in the Facebook group or look at the hashtag on Instagram. And if you want to look it up, it's Sculpt January 19. And to see people saying, oh, I limited myself to 2 hours for this sculpt, and they're creating awesomeness, which is because they're more experienced. And in my personal experience, I'm spending 3 to 4 hours failing, and then another 2 hours trying to create something after I failed, which I have no problem with failure because that's part of learning. But it's just hilarious that I'm like spending 6 hours creating something really simple. And they're like, oh, 2 hours, I created this ornate decoration with all this detail in 2 hours. And I'm like, I look forward to getting to that place one day. And that just comes through practice, which I'm more than willing to do. And in some cases of the projects that I decided to choose, a lot of times I just needed more time. So if it wasn't a daily challenge and I just was tackling the sculpt just as a project, I could eventually, like I said with the with Ursula from Little Mermaid, I could eventually create a nice sculpt. It's just that it was a daily challenge and it's just not realistic to spend so many hours on each model, especially when I'm like working a full-time job and doing other things. So you have to try to do what you can. And also in doing what you can, you know, I mean with the octopus, and then there was day 5, which I think was tiny, so I decided to make a little kind of simple man. If you think of the clip art, if you look up clip art, and it's like the round head with the just the arms that don't really have fingers and stuff like that. If you think of that type of character, that's what I created. And then I just created a huge sphere, so it was like he was carrying it on his back, like if you see the statues of the world on the guy's back and stuff like that. So I created a very simplistic version of that, and that was after, was that after failing? I think that was like my original concept. But in my head, I'm just like, oh man, this is just so simple. And like I got so many likes once I posted it, and people were like, oh, this is so cool. And I'm like, that's getting out of your head and thinking something is not good just because it's simple or something. And then people just like it. It's like, oh, okay, this is nice. So that was a cool experience, just to create what I could and people still liked it. So full disclosure, I did not complete Sculpt January 19. It was a combination of just losing drive at the end of it. Part of it was because I missed days. I definitely skipped day 4, which is rotten, which that was hard already, because when you think of rotten, there's rotten teeth, rotten vegetables. Like anything rotten that I Googled, I would not be able to stomach looking at that to model it. So my idea to do rotten was to model one of the characters from Bebe's Kids, like the little boy with the hat with the purple hoodie, which I just didn't have time to do. But man, I'm not one of those people with a weak stomach, but I just can't. I just couldn't do that category. Like rotten teeth. I'm not trying to look at somebody's rotten teeth for like several hours, or just how the rotten vegetables and fruits were looking, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this looks so disgusting. But yeah, I missed a lot of days, and then by maybe January 15th, 19th or so, there's just a large gap of time where I was busy preparing for the stuff that I had to do. Like I'm president of my young professionals organization, and we have our we just had our join week this week, and so I had to like plan the events and make sure everything was all right. So I had to concentrate on that, because that's outward facing and that needs to be done. And that's why some of my personal stuff gets put on hold. But and then by like a lot of the topics at the end of the month were just not inspiring. I'm like, I don't want to create a harpy, or I don't want to create this thing that will probably be complicated for me. The last day, January 31st, was like an extreme expression, and so anything that I would have thought of would have required me to use anatomy to create a face, and I'm just not there yet. So yeah, I just like lost steam, but it was a good experience nonetheless. They're thinking about doing a modeling May, so I'm not sure if that will be open to just like regular 3D modeling, or will it be another sculpting challenge. But yeah, I would be open to doing modeling May. I mean, I'll be practicing up until then. I plan to do a lot of tutorials and stuff in the coming months, so it'll be good to see the growth that I have And definitely I'll be participating in Sculpt Timber, so I hope to be able to do all 31 days. I might go and check out Sculpt January 18 and see what that was. I've also looked up some other things. I mean, I'm willing to look up an Inktober and do sculpts from that. So I'll be practicing. So it was a good experience. So what did I like about Sculpt January? It definitely got me out of my comfort zone. I was forced to just do some things that I've never done before. I created some really nice anatomical pieces. Anytime it had to do with the body, I created pretty nice things. I mean, I don't think all of them were the most anatomically correct, but I mean, even for one of the days it was spherical, and I created like a bust of a butt. And then chest I did pretty well with, and the topic of fat, I just created like this area of a guy, which I actually wanted to, my original plan was to kind of create like if you think of an actual plus size model where they actually have meat on their bones, I wanted to do something like that. I was actually looking up bigger models, and I wanted to do like a black woman who's fly but has some meat, but that was towards the end, so I realized my limitations at that point. But like I was able to go outside my comfort zone, create some nice pieces to add to my portfolio, and push myself. Something I also liked, which was that had nothing to do with me, was that when they picked the winners, because they each day they picked 3 winners for each topic, and so when they picked the winners, I feel like they did a good job of choosing people who concentrated on the sculpting aspect of the challenge, and not just picking like the prettiest or the person who used the best like effects to add to their thing. They pretty much was like, okay, this is a pretty good sculpt. If they did add textures or some kind of extra effects to it, that was a plus, but at the very basis, this is a good sculpt. Something I didn't like about Sculpt January was that a lot of people, I feel like it's called Sculpt January, so it should be based on sculpting, and a lot of people were just trying to create these projects that looked really spiffy, and some of this was coming from like more experience, but people that were using Blender, they were using, I think it's called Eevee or something like that, where you can add some lighting highlights to the back. You could just draw on your thing and make it look more spiffy, and it's just like, that's not what this challenge is about. And then there was one, it was like the topic was liquid, and I feel like a lot of people modeled their stuff instead of sculpting, which is, I guess, nitpicky, but other people especially could have been using like what's called dynamics. So that's just a certain program where it helps you create water, liquid, fire, smoke, and all that type of stuff, like typical visual effects type things. And sometimes I could look at somebody's project and be like, that's not a sculpt, you just modeled that. Like, you just created shapes and just put it together, and that's not the point of this challenge. And then for the beard topic, there were people who were using like 3D hair for their beard, and I'm like, the point is to sculpt a beard, so why are you using 3D hair? That's like that doesn't make any sense because it's a sculpt challenge. So any beard that you create should be sculpted beard, like whether it's like a long Santa Claus or Father Time type beard, it should be something that has mass. Most likely gonna look cartoony unless you go to like like the old school sculpting where it just has like all the swirls in it and it's very structured. But using 3D hair for the sculpt challenge really literally doesn't make any sense. Because I mean, I guess you could sculpt the face, but the topic is beard and it's a sculpt challenge, so you should be sculpting a beard. So yeah, that's pretty much mostly what I didn't like about the challenge, which it just was like, this is a sculpt challenge. Why are you guys doing all this extra stuff? I mean, I understand that you're capable, but this is not what this challenge is about. But I didn't say anything because that's their prerogative if they want to do that. So for Sculpt January, would I do it again? Definitely yes. Like I said before, I'm thinking about doing Modeling May if they do that. I'm definitely doing Sculptember. I plan on practicing a lot more. It might not, I mean, after I decided to quit on day 24, I think day 24 was maybe when I created the fat category sculpt. But after I decided to quit that day, I actually just binge watched a lot of sculpting videos. So that I was still learning, even though I did decide not to do the challenge anymore. So yeah, I definitely, there was one video that I saw where the guy Yan Sculpts, YAN, he was had one video where he was encouraging people to do sculpts where you force yourself to do a sculpt in an hour, and he was making the point of, even if you don't have a skill set, it's forcing you to try to figure some things out in a short period of time. So I might try some of that. I definitely will want to do some longer projects that are not daily challenges and take my time with it, just so I can get comfortable using the tools. But I just look forward to my growth as a digital sculptor, because my expertise is 3D modeling, and I mostly do hard surface modeling, which is if you think of anything with a hard surface, whether that's a table, electronics, buildings, and all that type of stuff. So I'm trying to get more into the organic character modeling, animals, and all that type of stuff. So I just look forward to my growth as I continue to practice my sculpting. If you have any questions or thoughts about sculpting or anything, just leave them down in the comments. Please like this video, please subscribe, sign up for post notifications so you can get an email about my new videos every Wednesday, and I will see you in the next video.